Chris is Keith. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the public service meeting to order. I'd like approval on the minutes from our past meeting.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes pass. On our old business, let me see if there was any old business. Is there any old business here? We have one piece on our old business. It's an ordinance amending and supplementing the T9 General Provisions, Chapter 98, Streets and Sidewalks. Is there anyone here that wanted to comment on that?
I would just, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I would just say that we've never had an ordinance in the city where we actually control what occurs in the public right-of-way. This ordinance you have before you was crafted after similar ordinances in other cities in Ohio and throughout the country. Currently, utility companies, they place utilities within our right-of-way under kind of like a blanket approval that only requires coordination with the city and then other utilities. While this has served us well over the years, increased demand for space within the right-of-way has created spacing issues and also increased costs for the city. As a result, we're proposing this ordinance, which will establish control of the right-of-way by the city and allow us to charge fees in order to recover our actual costs associated with the administration of this ordinance. Some of you may have noticed Dominion's doing a lot of work in the city right now. Over the years, other people have done large jobs within the city. What we need now is to be able to control how those utilities are installed, but probably the most important thing is how the right-of-way is then reclaimed after the job is done, to make sure that we get the grass straightened around like it should be. If any trees are affected by the utility installation, get those replaced. And this ordinance provides an opportunity for us to do that. And we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for that explanation. As you know, we read this in last week, and we took time to have a little bit of an explanation. And I think, as I would imagine my colleagues on council would feel, that us having control is the best, because so often we are reading through and waiting for return calls on whatever the issue might be that we get from our residents. Now we can directly be handling these ourselves, so I think that's great. I'll open up to the committee now if anyone from the committee has a question or concern. Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Keith. On the bond side, 98.2 performance bond. No, oftentimes, I'm not saying all of them, but there may be some of our friends in the utility companies may not have may not spend as much time as they should in terms of dealing with trees in the ROW. Is that going to be taken into consideration, the value of these trees, and how is that going to be handled? I would start with yes, but I'd like Mr. Angeloni to come up, and he's got the details on the ordinance. Good, thank you.
Specifically, Councilman, to your question about the bonds, we're really looking at a couple of areas. Really, there's the construction period, and there's also this concept of a certificate of registration. So everybody that comes into our right-of-way is going to be required to obtain a certificate of registration. It tells us that they are, an appropriate party to be occupying our right-of-way. So that's step one for them getting in there. So there will be a bond that's associated with that, and then in addition to that, a construction bond that would put the area in question back to its original state. So in terms of a tree or something like that, yes, that could be factored into that construction permit bond.
Good, good. No, that's wonderful, because at times we've seen situations that we're all probably aware of, whereas it's not been addressed until after the fact, and that's a key component, I believe, in terms of dealing with this one here. And then in terms of the actual, the fees itself, how is it, what, we're looking at other cities in terms of determining a value, or not a value, I shouldn't say that word, that's the wrong word, but in terms of determining the actual fee itself, how is that going to be determined?
In terms of the registration fee, it's all tied to actual and direct costs. So whatever it takes for the city personnel to go out and vet that site, to understand it, to review it, that process, it'll be tied into that fee, whatever that ends up being.
So there's just going to be primarily just the registration from the very get-go, from the for the beginning, and then after that, what's going to happen is for each individual project, there'll be a permit granted for that. Is that, am I understanding this correctly?
If they want to crack the sidewalk or do something in our right-of-way, they're going to have to get a construction permit.
Exactly
yes,
right.
Yep.
And there'll be a fee for that as well.
Yes, there will be a fee associated with the construction permit as well, but it'll be actual and direct.
Okay, good. No, I applaud this. I know it's probably taken a considerable amount of time to put this together. Its time has come. I know a lot of other cities out there have worked on things similar to this, and I'm excited about the possibilities here. Thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Freeman.
I was just asking Mr. Moore, we've had this conversation before. We know AT&T is putting up boxes on curbs all over the city because of string that they're offering to different communities, and they are a visual obstruction if they're close to an intersection. Does this help us control that whatsoever?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any other Councilman?
Just following up on that question, could you explain how it does a little bit?
Yeah, basically, probably the most important part to that component would be there is a section of the ordinance that allows the service director to promulgate certain rules and regulations, also certain design guidelines that would allow us to control some of those aspects.
Councilman Swirsky.
So if AT&T would like to put a box on a corner of that some of the residents feel is don't want it there, what can the city do, since it's a visual negative rather than a visual plus? Understand that AT&T wants to provide service, so they have to have some of these, but what right would the city do if, is that?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of things. One is, first of all, we can't run afoul of certain state law that allows, and federal law that allows communications and things and service in certain area. We can't restrict it completely. But there are provisions in place that would allow us to say, move it across the street or within 100 feet of where they're proposing to do that. So there are built-in, safeguards in this ordinance for that.
So we would have the right to ask them to find other options that are reasonable.
Yes, and we can always ask them to do things as well. So even though we can't necessarily require them, we could always ask as well. But yes, there are certain things where we can move them a certain distance.
And the same would apply to mini cell towers, those cell boxes up on poles that in some cases appeared without anybody from the city knowing ahead of time. This would make sure that we keep track of those and make sure they go through a process of permit and application? Is that what you're?
Yes, absolutely. Anybody who wanted to put in a small cell facility in the city has to obtain a certificate of registration, and then they would have to apply for actually a special micro wireless permit. So they actually have a separate permit that would require them to register. So yes, it would definitely allow us to track that, where we haven't been able to track those in the past.
And we could make recommendations of alternative sites. But like you're saying, it's not legally binding, it'd just be recommendations, or?
Well, we can always ask
Yeah.
them to do things,
Yeah.
but certainly within the bounds of the state law, we can ask them to do and move things in a certain direction, or across the street or things like that.
Yeah, I've actually had a couple good experiences where I asked them to move a mini cell apparatus, and they did. So, yeah, okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, either on the committee or council people in the chambers, that have a question or concern? Seeing none, what is your pleasure?
We'd ask for continued time on this ordinance.
You know what, I
There's
appreciate that.
still part of the comment period that needs to occur.
It's 64 pages here, and so I think that's very nice. Okay, would anyone like to make a recommendation?
Motion to refer.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second for time. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this item will be referred. Thank you. That was the old agenda, and today we have an item on the new agenda, and that is under Public Service Ordinance, authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into Amendment Supplemental Number 2 to agreements between the City of Akron and Akron Energy Systems, LLC, relating to the financing of certain improvements to the city's steam, hot water, and chilled water system, and the sale of certificates payable for payments made under such agreement, authorizing the execution of the Amendment Supplement Number 2 to the financing agreement, authorizing actions necessary and incidental thereto, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you've ever been in my office, you probably have noticed there's a picture of Mayor Frank Rockwell in there, and I don't have it because he's particularly good looking. I have it because at some point in time, about 100 years ago, he took what was a 2-day horse ride up to Portage County, and his advisors said to him, look, we need to look at the Cuyahoga River, we need to buy some property, we need to build a dam so that our residents have water for the next however long. I think you pretty much know the rest of that story. The project before you is somewhat similar to that. What we're doing here is that we're investing in our steam plant to ensure that 2 of our largest employers and our finest institutions are guaranteed reliable, resilient, environmentally responsible, and also competitively priced energy in the form of steam and chilled water. The city, the county, the Canal Place, and then all the other downtown users depend on this system. They're also going to benefit from these improvements, but they depend on this system for their steam and chilled water. The good news, I think, is that the major customers have signed long-term agreements, which will allow for the financing of this project so that the improvements will not put a burden on the city of Akron. I believe most of you toured the facility, and I really, really appreciate everybody that went out and looked at it. I hope you were impressed. It's truly a remarkable turnaround from 5 years ago. I know that Mr. Abdenauer from Akron General Cleveland Clinic is here, and Mr. Considine from Akron Children's are here, and they'd like to give their viewpoints on this issue. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. And those of you that are in the audience, it has been requested that these people speak today, and as chairman of the committee, I would like either one of you to come up and start us off.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Steve Abdenauer. I'm Senior Vice President of Operations for Cleveland Clinic, Akron General, and I want to say we've been working on this potential agreement for, I believe it's going on 9 years now, and would hope that today would culminate in approval to finally move forward. As was indicated by Mr. Moore, between, I believe, the 2 of our institutions, Cleveland Clinic and Akron General, our colleagues, I believe we represent about 2/3 of the output consumption of the steam plant, and that plant provides for us our entire ability to heat our campus. We have no redundancy for another source. It further provides for us our ability to sterilize all our instruments for our operating rooms, and that happens year-round. Over the years, we've been kind of challenged. We know we've at times paid a premium for the steam, and having done internal studies, it was kind of debatable whether or not we could move forward and have our own steam plant and enjoy perhaps a reduced rate. But understanding that we want to be a good corporate citizen and that the steam plant does not just support the hospitals, but it does also support some vital businesses downtown area. And were Akron General and/or Children's to drop off that system, it may make things pretty financially untenable to continue. So, long story short, we feel it is in our best interest to move forward with this long-term agreement whereby Cleveland Clinic, Akron General, and our colleagues Children's make a long-term commitment to remain on the steam plant in return for some improvements and upgrades that have been proposed to both the generating facility itself and the infrastructure. Anyone who's driven down Cedar Street in the last year has pretty much been well aware of some of the disruptions as part of, I think, the return, what would become a return steam line, and provide some redundancy to Cleveland Clinic Akron General. These are welcome improvements that we look forward to. And again, I would just basically say Cleveland Clinic Akron General provides its full support going forward for the project. So.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abenauer.
Madam Chair, Committee, my name is Bill Considine, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Executive Officer of Your Children's Hospital. When I was just reflecting on our interaction today, I couldn't help but think about December 20, 1984. I remember sitting in my office and the windows shook, the various books on shelves rattled, and that was the day the explosion occurred at the recycled energy plant. As you already heard, Akron General and ourselves at that time had no redundancy for steam, and the date was December 20th. Summa, City Hospital at the time, they had a backup system, as did the University of Akron. The way the community came together around that tragedy was something that I know, again, touched my pride in terms of being a native Akronite, but spoke to all our best traits as a community. We really did come together, supported the families that lost loved ones in that explosion, because it was a true tragedy. But we also looked at how we could work together to make sure that Akron General and Children's at the time had steam. In a very short order, they tied in the old Goodrich facility that could tie into the lines that fed our two hospitals and also fed downtown Akron. We had several meetings together, and there was no pointing of fingers of blame. It was only focused on how we as a community could collaborate and come up with a solution. From that date, moving forward, there's been countless sessions talking about how we could reinvent that recycled energy plant. There's some highs and there's been some lows. Over the last several years, though, because of knowledge we gained from site visits, I know a group of us went to Rochester and looked at what they were able to do with the recycled energy plant. As you already heard from my colleague at Cleveland Clinic Akron General, many consultants have come to both our organizations and suggested that we could build our own steam plant for a cheaper price and probably long-term cheaper steam. Yet what that would mean to the city of Akron was something that really violated both of our organizations' belief in corporate citizenship. We really thought that there were better models we could look at that would help not only the families that we serve, but also the entire city of Akron and all the families that call Akron home. So we stayed together, and I know our board at Children's always reflected on the way the city stood behind what we needed to do in terms of providing patient care back in 1984. We could not have solved that problem by ourselves at that point in time. And I think together, we really, putting all our minds focused, we can come up with the right solution. We benefit greatly right now from very stable leadership at Akron Energy. And over the last 2.5 years, there's been no subsidy required for that plant. And the quality of the steam that's coming to our organizations has been enhanced. We do have some regulatory requirements, though, we need to meet on a going forward basis. So the $16 million or so that the council has already put into 2 other funding approaches to help address the shortages of that steam plant, we now can build on with this request for another $25 million. And as you already heard, we believe that those costs will be covered by the use of the hospitals, downtown, and efficiencies that will come to the plant. And Mark and his team can talk about those efficiencies much better than I, but they'll benefit, I know, our organization, they'll benefit all the downtown folks and our colleagues at Cleveland Clinic Akron General. We have made a commitment that all our future buildings will be on the system, and we're also working very closely to try to convince our colleagues at the University of Akron that they may want to come back on the system. So the future of that plant can be very bright, and I believe is very bright because of the collaborative nature of the solutions that we're bringing forward. So thank you very much for your dedication to this community, for you giving us the opportunity to work out solutions. Even though when we had failure in the past, we learned from failures. And what we've been able to bring forward right now is a very viable solution that I know I'm very confident in, and looking forward to continuing the partnership we've enjoyed for such a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Considine. Before we go any further, did you want Mark at all to speak?
Do you want him to give a little? Do you want him to give a little history of what? How we got? Okay.
You know what? Go ahead, Mark. We have those of us who had the opportunity to go to the steam plant. Mark has a great bedtime story about the steam plant and where it was, which would have been a nightmare, and where it is today that'll lull you into believing again in good things are possible with the right person at the helm. So Mark, if you want to take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mark Davis. I've been in the district energy business my entire career, actually co-opted in a district energy facility in Cleveland, and I've been involved with this facility for the last 9 years. And I've come to learn, when we walked in, we had a group of employees that were literally working in the most unsafe conditions I've ever seen. There were, plywood sheet size holes in the ceiling, safety devices eliminated off of powerful equipment. There were over 300 safety work orders in the facility. The employees were, that told me 2 things. One is, this is a moral thing for me. This is my industry. I know I can help fix this. Secondly, there's some really good people here because nobody died. And the first thing we did when we came to the organization, Don Hoffman's here with me, he's our chairman, and some representatives of our team are here. We took everybody off-site and we said, this is a really bad situation. This is September, and we've got Akron Children's and Cleveland Clinic, Akron General, we're the only supplier of steam. And we said, we're going to have to do one thing really, really well and have an understanding, which is we're going to work safe. And so we actually worked with the OSHA area director and a private safety contractor, and we made sure that our employees knew that their safety came first. And in those 9 years, I'm proud to say our team has accomplished an incredible thing. We've had 1 lost time accident in 9 years in our facility, which is multiples better than the industry standard. The ironic part of it was an employee that broke his ankle walking to safety training. True story.
Remember that.
True story. Since then, it's really been a story of collaboration. There's a lot of details, but there's a tremendous amount of hard work The guy next to me, the two people next to me, Chris and John, Diane, then to work with Mr. Considine and Steve and Tim Ziga from, Tim had a boiler background at B&W and was instrumental. This was just such a collaborative effort, and we, in the past you've approved the funding to get us going, and the real vote of confidence we needed was the hospitals to say that they were in for this community solution. And the way they did an extremely thorough analysis, and we were completely transparent in that, they arrived at a decision what was best for the community, and we were prepared to execute. So it's just been a wonderful thing to be involved in the community, and the successes we finally get to say them, because it's now everybody's on board. We're starting to sign long-term agreements, we're adding customers. It's a really great story, and our great mayor has embraced this and is sort of realized this is a great story for Akron. I used the word once, and I think one of the councilwomen said, I think that's the right, I think you said it, you said generational, right? You said this is a generational project, and while it's a great collaboration, this isn't just benefits for downtown. I'd like to hand this over to the mayor now and talk a little bit about how these benefits are really great for Akron.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
First, Steve, Mr. Abenour, Mr. Considine, thank you for coming down and talking about and the partnership that I think we've been able to form pretty well. I think this is really a success story. I got to give a lot of credit to the team. They basically took a subsidizing venture and turned it completely around that not only supports downtown, all of downtown, but if you look at, a lot of times we talk about the environmental impact of the things that we do. In part of your program, in the very last page, if you look at some of the things that we're able to do by investing this money and making these businesses a little bit more stable, and when you're able to provide the services that the two largest hospitals, right here in our central core are able to provide, we reduce our fuel efficiency by 46%, which is almost can heat 8,000 homes. Reduce our annual output, which is the equivalent of about idling 1,100 city buses a year for a year. Also, our carbon footprint, which is equivalent to about 5 times the total of the Cauga Valley National Park, and reducing our water use by about 30 million gallons per year. When you add all those up, that's a success story that I think we can all take credit for in being able to build this. And when you can turn around a venture like this, they looked at a lot of district energy systems, and I can tell you we even looked at some district energy systems, just in best practices in other countries. We didn't travel there, but you looked at some of the things that they do. This really is a success story that you can go out there and say, listen, we were able to do this. We turned it around. They're not getting a subsidy anymore, and we provide safe and reliable energy to two very important institutions right in the heart of our city. So I can't thank you enough for the collaboration and for all the hard work for the last 9 years, just 3 for me, but thank you in staying committed to downtown and to the city of Akron. So thank you very much.
Diane, is that you behind that screen?
I'm hiding, yes.
Okay, good.
I had no comments.
Oh, you have none? Okay. I thought maybe you wanted to follow up with something. Mr. Moore.
I would just say we're done with our part of the presentation, and if council was of a mind, we'd ask for suspension of the rules. The financing on this project, the longer we wait, the higher the rates are probably going to go. We all know that they're going up. So we would ask for suspension if that was your desire.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone on the committee that has any questions or concerns that have not been addressed already in either visiting the steam plant or in conversation with John or Chris? Is there anyone? I'm sorry, Councilman Fusco.
Just a couple comments, Chair. Keith, this is a great story. It really is, in terms of where we've been and where we're going. One of the telling things for a lot of us on council is whenever she's smiling. Whenever Diane Miller does it, that means we're saving money. That means things are in all sincerity, and it's been a tough haul over the last several years for us. And what you've done in terms of transforming this, and what we've heard from our from the hospitals and Mr. Considine, we're positioning Akron, downtown Akron especially, that we've invested so much into, to attract even more in terms of business-wise and positioning by bringing on more folks. And you've done just an outstanding job. And without question, I think this is a good investment for the city of Akron.
Thank you so much, Councilman Fesco. Councilman Freeman.
I just, after taking the tour and looking at this chart that we have here, if that's your income, that's a bad chart. If that's your expense, this is a great chart. And a lot of us that have been around here for a few years remember every year it was the same thing. And it was money that was painful to spend. But your team really is to be commended. I think, Ms. Dawson, in our presentation, I heard we're not issuing bonds. These are certificates of participation.
That is correct.
Okay. So when we go out for our bond rating, that doesn't affect us whatsoever, is my understanding.
This is a different form of debt.
Yes.
But again, it will be repaid with sources from the project.
Yeah.
Will not be costing the city a dime, which is my favorite type of project.
We've been over in the 9th Ward this weekend in 6 hours. This is only 6 hours. We built a playground, a kaboom park, and you saw all these people working together. Well, this has been a 9-year project, and I'm dumbfounded to see how this has turned around from what it used to be. You folks really are to be commended. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman. Is there anyone else? Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I'm always never cease to amaze me that John is now a storyteller. So thank you for that. I too had an opportunity to visit the plant and was really taken in by just the presentation and all the wonderful things that have occurred at least since 2015. I really like the piece, of course, about how we're able to engage our young people potentially to get them ready to come into some of the fields that will be available to them. The only thing that really, as we look at, even if we're just co-signing on a loan, I was concerned about what I saw as lack of representation, the girl power kind of, and particularly for Black people or minorities. I came at a time, and there was at least 16 employees inside of the place, and I kind of looked a while because I'm very cognizant of that. So I'm hopeful as we move forward that we're conscientious about that and making sure that we have proper representation because this is a significant project and is a significant benefit to our city, and I think it's significant that we do our best to be inclusive. So thank you.
Councilman Swirsky.
Wow. In terms of making an impact on the environment, these numbers don't lie. You have done what others only dream about, and I want to thank you.
And if there's nothing else, I think, oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Amobian.
Taking everything apart. Thank you very much, and thank you, Chris, for the invitation. I was more than blown away by the presentation, and after seeing the facility itself, I was quite impressed. And then he told me what Diane said when she found out that the city didn't have to pay anything. I said, okay, I'm more than impressed. But I had a little conversation with Mr. Considine because we were reflecting on many of the leadership roles that he has assumed in this city, and just talked about the character counts of the Akron Public School System, of which he's are you still chairman? I know you were chairman at the time. Yeah, he's still chairman of that. And then I teased him about the vote that we took a few years ago, and this belonged to Children's Hospital. He said, oh, yeah, we did have the opportunity. I said, yeah, but you turned it around, and now you have brought partners along, and again, leadership. And if and when you decide to retire, make sure whoever follows you continues these leadership roles that you've assumed in this city, because I can't think of anything major in Akron that has occurred that Mr. Considine hasn't been a part of. And again, we thank you for your long-term commitment, as well as Cleveland Clinic Akron General. And I really understood this after you walked me through it and then you showed me, because I tell you, I was not really prepared for what I saw, but I was very impressed, and thank you so much for your leadership. And I understand you brought some of these skills from up north that you brought back to Akron. But this is great, and thanks to everyone, and I am more than on board. I am over the top of this. I told the mayor that I was very impressed. I'm not really sure why he was surprised to hear that from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, did I miss anybody? Okay, well, and then I will take that motion. I want to thank Mr. Abenauer and Mr. Considine for making time today to come down here. I believe that this piece of legislation was presented in such a professional way that I cannot thank you enough for getting questions answered before it ever even came before us, that you showed us, you told us, and then you made yourselves open. So I want to thank you for the respect that you just showed myself and all my colleagues here. And Mr. Considine, Mr. Abenauer, my husband dated me for 5.5 years before we ever got engaged. I think you had a longer courtship with this plant and with Mark, and I didn't think that was possible. But, and I also believe that we have personally forgotten one other person, and that's Tom Smith. And Tom, would you please stand up? He is... You know, we sit here when we thank the Mr. Considines because their name's out there all the time. It's right there, and the Mr. Abenauers are right out there. But the Tom Smiths, you'll probably will see your name in the obituary, but we don't get the chance to thank you now for everything. This is a community project. This is not just the city of Akron's project. This is a community project, and if you look at our audience, and then you look at who's sitting behind here, we had to have the thumbs up of everybody and the buy-in of everybody. And once again, before I take his motion, I want to thank you for the respect that you have shown council and how you presented us. Thank you very much. Now, I had a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, we have more than 1 second there. Okay, all in favor? We had a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that will go on record as suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Is there anything else to come before council? Anything else to come? You weren't clapping for me, were you?
No.
No, okay. Anything else to come before council? Hearing and seeing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Kelly Dodson, Akron Energy. Veronica, thank you for your feedback.
Yes, sir. So everybody says my selfie look like a drum belly. We need to take one of those.
Let's do one right.
Okay, let's say, yeah, that's like,
Okay, that's better, yeah.
you have to smile. They said that wasn't a pork picture. I said, no, enjoy it.
Never, never.
Thank you.
Am I? I'm not. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kelly Dodson. I'm Kim Hartman's brother. I met you. I know. High school beau. I told her just go slow, and she got over that cancer. Keep on. She was a fabulous. So thanks for your support. It's awesome. When we get more pieces, parts in there, come on over. We'll show you the ropes again. Oh, I'm hot.
Hi, I'm Mark Kerber, new president.
All right, in about 30 seconds, we will begin the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Another 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. When we get more pieces, come on back.
I'd like to call to order the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, if we could, please. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting? We have a motion and a second as we begin this meeting. And all in favor of approval of the minutes, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All right, we have a couple items before us. For the record, let it be known that all members are present. Our first item is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance or her designee to pay $60,000 to support the planning and implementation of the 2018 Akron International Soapbox Derby and declaring an emergency.
Good afternoon. Again, this $60,000 is to support the Soapbox Derby. This is the same amount it's been for the last few years. Mark Gerberick, who is President and CEO of Soapbox Derby, is here. If you have any questions, I have pass-outs, though.
Welcome, Mark. Thank you for being here.
Would you tell me what's going on?
Nice to see everybody this afternoon, and we appreciate the time. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm handing out and just have a couple points. For you guys that don't know me, I've lived in Akron for 35 years and really proud to be the president and CEO of such an iconic brand, the Soapbox Derby. I think there's two things that are great about the Soapbox Derby is, one, it's a great asset to the community, and number two is we're serving the citizens of Akron now. As we talk about the All-American event, that's an event that brings 400 families to Akron in the middle of July. That's just one piece. Last month, we had 140 teams race in our middle school, high school races, which is a really cool thing for the town. And one of the parts of the mission of the Derby is meaningful experiences. So meaningful experiences, we had 560 seniors race down the hill last year, which is a really cool thing for us. But we have Inclusion Day, Family Day, Veterans Appreciation Day. So 80 events, more than 10,000 trips down the hill now. So Soapbox Derby is a great asset to the community. We also do a lot of outreach into the community, working with the Urban League, Urban Vision, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA, and that's both with getting them out to the track to race and also putting our curriculum and our STEM education programs into their facilities. You know, as you know, with GAR, Huntington, and the United Way, it's neighborhoods where kids gather. And so we're really involved in that collaboration to serve those communities as well. We just came off 2 weeks of summer camp where kids were out there racing cars and learning about STEM. But the cool thing for Akron, and this is a great partnership, Akron Public Schools, University of Akron, and Soapbox Derby just completed a 3-year grant. And this past year, every 8th grade class in Akron Public Schools had STEM education program in the schools. Served about 1,500 kids, tabletop wind tunnel, 3D printer, mini cars racing down the track. And so great opportunity to really serve our community and your community. So all excited about this year's All-American. As you can see, there's a lot more promotion going on around town. We're spending a lot of money on marketing. Our partners at First Energy have given us 5 billboards around the city to promote the event. So we're really trying to turn it into more of an event than just a race, and we hope that you all come out and support it. So thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee or any other committee council members? Yes, Mr. Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got the opportunity to meet Mr. Gerbridge a few weeks ago. For the last couple of years, my girlfriend's nephew has been racing. And I want to say, Mr. Gerbridge, I really, really was quite impressed with you. You're a great ambassador. It was raining that morning, and he was going around and introducing himself to the whole crowd, just welcoming them to Akron. It is a truly great event, and you are truly a great ambassador, and I want to thank you, sir.
Thank you. I have a question on Senior Day. Sure. Do you have to get a special rider on your policy that day, or is it?
Boy, I really need to ask for driver's licenses this year. I can tell you one quick funny story. We had a 97-year-old lady go down the hill. And if you haven't been out, we'd love to have you come out and try. There's only two things in the car you have to control, the steering and the brake. And she was right on that line all the way down. She was perfect. She just forgot to brake.
Excellent.
So, straight into the rocks at the end of the driveway. She's fine. Everything was good. But, you know, it was just a funny story.
She now lives over in the central part of Outlet now. So. Okay, thank you so much. What would the pleasure be on this?
Consent.
Okay.
Motion for consent. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll make sure this goes onto our consent agenda. Thank you for all your efforts, and look forward to many continued years of sweat and blood out of you. So thank you. Thanks so much. All right, we have another item coming before us here, and this is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance or her designee to pay $15,000 for an operating subsidy to Cascade Locks Parks Association in order to support the maintenance of the Cascade Locks and Muscle Store Museum as a welcoming, recreational, and culturally educational urban green space, and declaring an emergency. Ms. Miller-Dawson?
Thank you. Again, this $15,000 is the same amount that it has been for the past few years. It is an operating subsidy, as you indicated. Don Gordon is here from Cascade Locks to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Welcome, Don.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We've seen you around here a lot recently.
Yes.
So that's wonderful.
Well, as you know, the Muscle Store, we're there to preserve and protect and promote the cultural heritage of Akron. The area has become more vibrant with the North Side Market, the Cascade Lofts. That entire area has really come to life, and we've benefited from it. We've also benefited from the OSIT tours that are regularly held or started in the store on Fridays. They've attracted a lot of people to the area that wouldn't necessarily have known about us or come down. So it's really been a fun last 3 years. The place has never looked as good as it is right now. And we enjoy not only our neighbors and community members, but we also enjoy a lot of visitors from, out of town, out of state, out of the country even. So I think it's a real benefit to Akron, and you should be proud that Akron has had this partnership with the Cascade Locks Park Association since 1989, so it's really been beneficial for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from any committee members or other council people? Mr. Swirsky? I did not see anything come from anyone here. So.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but I'm just glad because it's kind of a unique combination of a recreational facility that also reminds us of our past. And in taking a look at efforts around the country to attract new visitors to an area, one of the things that's been recommended is that Akron develop and build on its own identity and its own past. And I think when I think of Akron, I think of the Muscle Store and I think of the canal. And so it's something that we've supported in the past, and I feel strongly that we should continue to support it.
Absolutely. Yes, true Phoenix down there, rose from the ashes, and to see what we have down there now.
It's truly remarkable. The oldest wooden structure in Akron.
Excellent. Do we have a motion for consent? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of placing this item on the consent agenda, please let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All right, we'll get this on the consent agenda. Thank you so much for your work and your passion. Is there anything else to come before us? All right. If not, we will be adjourned at 3:55. Thank you.